What if everything we thought we knew about Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni was completely backward? For months, the mainstream media painted Justin Baldoni as the problematic one, a manipulator, a hidden aggressor, someone who just couldn't accept Blake Lively's boundaries or success. But now leaked emails, internal whistleblowers, and suppressed commentary are revealing something shocking. It may have been Team Blake pulling the strings the whole time. We're talking about a coordinated PR campaign, strategic media manipulation, and even alleged pressure on content creators, all seemingly aimed at one thing: destroying Justin Baldoni's credibility before he ever had a chance to speak. And the most disturbing part, it worked for a while, but the truth has a habit of fighting back. As creators begin to speak out and digital forensic analysts unpack the receipts, we're seeing a different narrative emerge, one that paints Blake's team not as the victim but as the orchestrators of a silent, calculated smear job. From subtle influencer seeding to outright attempts at legal intimidation, the effort to control the story was massive until now. In this exclusive deep dive, we break down the full timeline, expose the coordinated attacks, and examine how Blake Lively's PR machine may have overplayed its hand and triggered a backlash that could change the conversation in Hollywood forever. Because when the mask slips, the fallout isn't just reputational, it's cultural. In Hollywood, silence is rarely just silence, especially when it involves two of the most visible, influential figures in the industry. For months, the public narrative painted Blake Lively as a powerful force holding her ground against mounting scrutiny. But beneath the curated social media posts and polished red carpet appearances, there were quiet rumblings, clues that pointed toward something deeper and perhaps darker. Justin Baldoni, known for his soft-spoken charisma and humanitarian efforts, wasn't expected to become a central figure in one of the most explosive showbiz legal stories in years. And yet here we are. What started as a behind-the-scenes disagreement has turned into a public relations and legal saga that's putting reputations, alliances, and even careers at risk. Initially, it was Blake's camp that seemed to control the narrative. Anonymous sources painted Baldoni as difficult, manipulative, and desperate for relevance. Tabloid-style blogs ran with headlines framing him as the instigator, and certain Hollywood-friendly platforms suspiciously amplified only one side of the story. But then came the twist no one was prepared for. An internal leak, reportedly from a staffer formerly close to Blake's PR team, claimed that Team Blake had been orchestrating a calculated smear campaign against Baldoni for months before any legal documents were filed. If true, it would mean that the public was intentionally misled and that Blake's team may have crossed ethical and potentially legal lines in order to protect her brand. What followed was a sudden and seismic shift in the discourse. Journalists, influencers, and industry insiders began to re-examine event statements and coverage going back over a year. Old interviews suddenly read differently, deleted tweets took on a new weight, and most of all, people started asking, what is Blake Lively trying to hide? This revelation came at a crucial moment. Blake's legal team had just made aggressive moves, including subpoenas targeting independent creators and digital outlets who had reported on the story. The timing felt too precise to ignore. Why try to silence others now? Was it to prevent them from piecing together the truth? We began reviewing public court records, social media data, and timelines. And what emerged was startling. There is growing evidence that suggests Team Blake didn't just respond to a threat, they may have started the fire themselves. The early whispers, negative press leaks, and influencer-friendly talking points weren't organic. They were allegedly crafted. In the weeks leading up to the case becoming public, multiple entertainment reporters received identical talking points, oddly phrased emails from sources close to the matter, and subtle warnings not to support Baldoni's side. One journalist even admitted under condition of anonymity, it felt like we were being told how to talk about this. Before we even knew what it was, a pattern began to emerge. Stories critical of Baldoni would appear shortly after he made public statements supporting inclusive storytelling or calling out Hollywood hypocrisy. The timing was uncanny. And now those same stories are being examined for biased sponsorship links and potential coordination with PR insiders tied to Blake's camp. One of the biggest breakthroughs came when a whistleblower anonymously released a trove of internal emails allegedly exchanged between a member of Blake's publicity team and several media consultants. While the emails haven't been independently verified by major outlets, yet digital forensics experts suggest the metadata lines up with the timeline of known public events. In those emails, terms like contain Justin early push the empathy fatigue angle and make her look like the stabilizer appear repeatedly. It paints a picture of a carefully crafted narrative campaign, one that was mapped out long before the public had any clue there was trouble behind the scenes. The language is not overtly aggressive, but it's unmistakably strategic. One particular email even outlines a social seeding plan to use meme accounts and fan pages to downplay Baldoni's popularity, question his motives, and even mock his public vulnerability, something that had previously been seen as one of his greatest strengths. The leak also includes screenshots of a Slack chat where a PR strategist working with Blake's team refers to Baldoni as a manageable threat for now and suggests they should use his own words against him. Within days of that timestamp, fan accounts began spreading out of context quotes, and TikTok creators unknowingly played into the narrative. The manipulation wasn't limited to creators or journalists. Even red carpet interviews started to reflect the coordinated push. When asked about the creative differences with Baldoni on a past project, Blake gave a well-rehearsed line about respecting different visions, which now feels less like diplomacy and more like deflection. Behind that smile, there may have been a storm brewing, one her team was determined to control. Hollywood is no stranger to image management, but what makes this situation different is the timing and intensity of the tactics and how quickly public perception turned once these leaks surfaced. There's now a growing movement of fans and observers calling out what they see as manipulation. Even industry insiders are quietly distancing themselves from Blake's camp. A former stylist who worked with her for years recently unfollowed her and liked multiple posts defending Baldoni. A producer who once sang Blake's praises during press junkets suddenly canceled a podcast appearance where she was scheduled to discuss image control and celebrity culture. The tide is turning. But what does it mean legally? Legal analysts suggest that if it can be proven that Blake's team launched a false narrative with intent to harm Baldoni's reputation or career, there could be grounds for a civil suit. Beyond the current legal battle, while the standard for defamation is high, coordinated character assassination, especially with documented proof, shifts the conversation. Public relations tactics walk a fine line. Influence is expected, but deception, especially when it involves silencing critics and planting misinformation, can backfire spectacularly. And for someone like Blake Lively, whose entire brand is built on charm, elegance, and approachability, the consequences could be immense. Baldoni, for his part, has remained measured. His legal filings have been focused, his public comments limited, but those close to him say he's aware of the leaks and quietly preparing for what might come next. As the court filings grew and public scrutiny intensified, content creators who had once reported neutrally or even favorably on Blake Lively began to shift their tone. Many of them had no legal background or direct connection to the case. They were simply analyzing what was happening in real time. But suddenly those same creators found themselves targeted not just by fans but by legal notices. At first, these creators thought it was just part of doing celebrity commentary. But once multiple YouTubers, TikTokers, and independent podcasters compared notes, the picture became clearer. Nearly all of them, even those who had barely scratched the surface, had received legal threats, requests to take down videos, or even subpoenas connected to Blake Lively's team. The pattern was too specific to ignore. Many of these creators had months earlier reported inconsistencies in Blake's public timeline, or commented on the oddly coordinated nature of stories aimed at Justin Baldoni. Most weren't Team Anyone, they were simply raising questions. But even that apparently was enough to attract heat from Lively's legal orbit. Several creators spoke out. One in particular, a legal commentator known for her meticulous analysis of court records, revealed she had received a cease and desist letter within 48 hours of pointing out that a specific gossip blog had changed its tone immediately after a rumored meeting between its editor and a PR rep from Lively's camp. That blog, interestingly, had never issued such a sudden tone shift before, not even during larger scandals involving A-listers. Another mid-sized YouTuber shared screenshots of a brand pulling a sponsorship within hours of them criticizing Blake's narrative. The brand later apologized privately, claiming they had received external pressure. That same creator had only made 2 short videos about the situation, both of which were careful not to take sides, and yet the pressure kept coming. What's most telling is that some of these creators had previously worked with networks or platforms tied to projects involving Blake Lively or Ryan Reynolds. There's growing speculation that those relationships are now under silent strain, with some creators going so far as to say that entire partnerships have been frozen due to the unfolding PR war. This raises a serious question. If Blake's team truly had nothing to hide, why would they go to such lengths to silence small creators? The creators themselves have become part of the story. Their experience now serves as indirect evidence of something more coordinated. When voices across platforms begin echoing the same concerns, especially when they have nothing to gain from doing so, it suggests a broader pattern that can't be brushed off as coincidence, and this goes beyond YouTube or TikTok. Even journalists from mid-tier digital newsrooms are talking privately about being warned off the story. One entertainment editor reportedly told their staff to wait for direction from legal before publishing anything new about the Blake Baldoni saga, a move that raised eyebrows internally. This chilling effect where media figures feel restrained from even asking basic questions is deeply troubling in a world where free commentary and fair analysis are the foundation of public discourse. But now, thanks to the bravery of a few voices refusing to back down, the wall is beginning to crack. The question is, what will come pouring out next as we draw the curtain on this complex, high-stakes saga between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni? One thing has become disturbingly clear: the truth doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers through patterns, leaks, and quiet shifts in public tone. And now those whispers are beginning to roar. What started as a vague industry rumor about a disagreement between two celebrities has become one of the most telling examples of how power, media, and influence collide behind the scenes in Hollywood. But this isn't just about two actors with differing visions. It's about the system that allowed one side, Blake Lively's team, to allegedly weaponize press, creators, and even legal tools to control the public narrative. For months, Blake Lively's public image was seemingly untouchable. Her red carpet elegance, her relatable interviews, and her carefully crafted social media presence created an illusion of sincerity and charm. But as internal emails, whistleblower leaks, and coordinated PR tactics began to surface, that image started to crack. The very moment Justin Baldoni's name was dragged into the controversy, patterns began emerging that were too consistent and too strategic to be ignored. The early smear pieces, the influencer accounts parroting identical language, the anonymous insider quotes all now look less like spontaneous reactions and more like calculated moves. Creators who tried to report objectively on the situation were suddenly silenced. Legal threats, takedown requests, and reputational attacks were hurled at anyone who dared to question the official narrative. But in trying to control the conversation, Blake's team may have underestimated one very important force: the internet's collective memory. Receipts, timestamps, archived posts, and digital trails don't lie, and they rarely disappear. It's this very reality that's now working against Lively's camp. Because once the timeline is laid bare, a very different story emerges, one where Justin Baldoni may not have been the aggressor at all. In fact, it increasingly appears he may have been the target from the very beginning. And what's more troubling is that Blake's own team, or at least elements within it, may have known exactly what they were doing. If the emails and Slack logs are legitimate, then this wasn't a reactive strategy, it was premeditated. A coordinated smear effort designed to shape public opinion before legal proceedings could reveal inconvenient truths. This raises critical ethical questions. Is it acceptable for a celebrity team to go this far to protect a brand, even if it means potentially damaging another person's career? Where is the line between narrative control and character assassination? And what happens when that line is crossed? We're now seeing the ripple effects across the industry. Collaborators distancing themselves, insiders unfollowing, even brands beginning to pull away. What once felt like a fortress of PR strength around Blake Lively is now beginning to look more like a house of cards, and it's swaying in the wind. Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni has remained for the most part silent. His legal filings speak volumes, but his public presence has been measured and restrained. In a media environment where outrage sells and clickbait dominates, his refusal to retaliate through tabloids or social media speaks to a strategy rooted in patience and perhaps confidence in the truth coming out. And indeed it is. This entire drama has triggered a broader conversation about power imbalances in Hollywood, not just between men and women, but between the famous and the voices who report on them. When small content creators are targeted for simply asking questions, we must ask ourselves, what kind of ecosystem are we living in? Public trust in celebrity media narratives is already shaky. Audiences today are savvier, more skeptical, and far less willing to accept the shiny veneer of fame at face value. The Blake versus Baldoni situation has only deepened that mistrust. People are watching closely, and they're no longer afraid to speak out when they see manipulation, no matter how well-dressed it may be. It's also a reminder to those in power: the truth has a funny way of finding daylight. You can silence critics for a while, you can spin stories and pay for favorable coverage, but you cannot outrun a timeline filled with digital fingerprints. Eventually, the mask slips. So what's next for Blake Lively? This could mark the beginning of a long reputational repair campaign, one that may or may not succeed depending on how much more is exposed. For Justin Baldoni, this could be a bittersweet vindication, not just in court, but in the eyes of a public that's beginning to question everything they were told. And for the creators who spoke up, this is a moment of reckoning. Their willingness to take risks, publish uncomfortable truths, and resist censorship has helped pull back the curtain on one of the most carefully orchestrated campaigns of media control we've seen in recent memory. In many ways, they've become the real journalists in this story. Not because they had the most resources, but because they weren't afraid to look closer. This story isn't over. More subpoenas are being issued, more whistleblowers are coming forward, more cracks are forming in the foundation of Blake's media operation. As we speak, documents are being analyzed, alliances are shifting, and public opinion is recalibrating. But one thing is already clear: the narrative that Team Blake tried to build brick by brick is now collapsing under the weight of its own contradictions. And in that collapse, the truth is emerging, not because someone shouted it, but because 1,000 quiet voices refuse to be silenced.